Hello, this is Kyou of Kyou System. I mentioned in one of my previous episodes that I was going to talk about collage art and that I couldn't concentrate, so I ended up talking about something else instead. Um, I've been thinking more about it, and rather than just talking and having like the normal kind of title card sitting there the whole time, I was thinking that I could kind of take something in a more interesting sort of direction and have a sort of I guess technically like a mini series where I go into detail about the collage art pieces that I have made, and talk a little bit more about what inspired them, what the different parts are supposed to mean, this, that, and the other, and in so doing, also have opportunities to talk about collage art just in general, and kind of go into a little more detail about some of the things that I feel are that collage art especially excels at, and that is more kind of difficult or difficult to do in normal traditional, well, so traditional drawing. I was going to say in normal digital drawing, in different aspects that go into it, different things to consider and the like. Not that I'm some kind of expert on collage art. Certainly, I've not made that many pieces of it, but nevertheless. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the first one that I made. Yeah, logical kind of order here. There's a piece titled "Provisionally Controlled Madness." Now, and I should be on screen here at this point. Now, this piece I made back in 2020. I had seen, or I saw on Twitter where someone, an artist who I've been friends with for a while, posted a collage art piece that they did. They had like solicited a bunch of requests from their followers to send in screenshots and images and things like that, and then they combined all of them into a collage art piece, and it turned out really, really well. And at the time, I had never thought to try and make anything like that, and I was quite, with how strikingly it turned out. I thought, maybe it might be interesting for me to try and make something like this too. So I did, and here's the result. Now, this was admittedly pretty difficult to release, because it turned out much more personal in a lot of ways than I had originally intended it to, and that I ever expected that it would, right? Because I mean, it's like, oh, it's a piece of collage art, When I went into it, I was like, well, whatever. I'll just throw some, I got some ideas for pictures I want to include. I'll put them all together, and it'll be a fun little thing. And then here's the result, and it is, well, it is what it is. Now, I wouldn't, you know, obviously I've gotten better as I've gotten better at digital art, and as I've gotten better at image manipulation and the like. If I went back and were to recreate this, I would probably neaten it up a good bit, because it is a bit rougher on the edges there. But I wouldn't change it in any material sense. Like, I think I would leave it largely the same. That is to say, I'm still overall pleased with how it came out, despite it being, at first glance, rather ugly, I suppose. Now, with that aside, so there are a few pieces here. I guess I'll just kind of talk about it one at a time here. The loudspeakers in the corner, those are lifted from the game Milia Broken, which is an excellent game. If you haven't played it, I very strongly encourage you to go download it and play it promptly. Pause the video and go do it now if you have to. Maybe by the same creator who made the Yumeniki fan game .flow, for what that's worth. But in any case, so there are segments in that game where there are these loudspeakers through which the titular Milia speaks. I don't think that's really a spoiler. And her voice is carried through the loudspeakers. Now, in the context of the game, some of the text that is played over the loudspeakers is not always. I mean, I guess it is always reversed, but there are parts of it where it is almost sort of maniacal, repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Now, this left a very strong impression on me when I played through it, like many things in that game did. So here, when I was putting together the collage, I definitely wanted to include the loudspeaker motif, and then also have a repeating phrase that I actually lifted from one of the Clockwork poems that I wrote, which is a series of like vent writing that I did a good few years back now. Which reads, "Ever upward, ever outward, the clockwork spins ever faster," and it just repeats ad nauseum. Now, so that's that. In the bottom left corner, there is a shot of Ozen, or Ozen, to pronounce it correctly, from Made in Abyss, who is one of the few characters that I very, very consistently actually relate to as a person, which is rare for me, I'll say that much. Even if the comparison is unflattering, it's nevertheless very, very accurate. And here in the text that's kind of like there associated with her is a slight rephrasing of like a quote that I lifted from Everyman Hybrid. Well, no, technically I lifted it from Tribe 12 when it was a crossover video with Everyman Hybrid. If you haven't watched those two series, go check them out. Especially I don't think Tribe 12 is finished. I don't know if it ever will be. Everyman Hybrid is finished. Go check that out. Definitely. Again, bookmark it if you have to. Pause this video, bookmark it, and then go watch that if you have to. Though it's a pretty long series. But anyway, so that's that. And that particular quote always really stuck out to me. And so the art in the kind of the white text and the kind of scratchy sketch, that is another vent art piece that I did. That was like a standalone one, where I was having an episode of Explosive Anger, and that I needed to get it out of my system and discharge it in a way that would not hurt anybody, not lash out at anybody. So I ended up drawing that in, as you could probably tell from the quality of just the way it's drawn and the way it's written, that it was rather, I guess you could say, I guess the nice way to put it would be frantic, very energetically drawn. And similar is the large gray image that's kind of in the bottom right underneath everything else, is another such. That one was less, well, because it was following on the tail of an episode of Explosive Anger, where it was more me just not being super proud or pleased with the fact that I had explosive anger and would get upset over the things I did to the degree that I did at that time. Fortunately, I've gotten a lot better at managing it, thank God, but nevertheless, at the time, there you go. And then in the top left corner behind everything else is, you might recognize it actually, if you are a fan of my work. This is the one balcony scene from Remembrance. And as I talked about in the video I did on Remembrance, it was this scene in particular that really stood out in my dream that I had that inspired Remembrance, and it really stood out, and it really felt important to me when I was making Remembrance, that particular scene. It had just a very personally significant bit of writing there, and so I felt I needed to include it there. And then last we have the stuff in the top right corner. Now the sort of giant head that's kind of laying sort of half submerged in the ground, that is a edited graphic that I took from Yume Tuki. Or I guess it's Yume Nikki, but it is written 2KKI. Another Yume Nikki fan game that I have sunken, whatever. I've just put probably easily hundreds of hours into, and that particular bit of scenery really stuck out to me. It really left a strong impression on me. And the text that's laid above it is actually lifted from Doki Doki Literature Club. It's one of the hidden poems here, and it's the one where describing walking through the abandoned warehouse and then falling into the pit of water. Another very powerful impression that resonates a lot with some dreams that I've had. So when it felt right to include it, you know. And I think that covers all of the pieces in this one. There were some other ideas, some other things I was going to include that I didn't end up including. So I guess I could talk more about that some other day, or I know I recycled some of them in future collage, or subsequent, I should say, collage art pieces that I made. So, well, if they come up, we can talk about it then. But the thing, with collage art is, again, when I went into it and was making it, I was not expecting it to end up being nearly so personal, nearly so evocative as it was, because it was another thing that inspired me to make this collage piece, in addition to the one posted by the one friend of mine on Twitter, was also a piece, or a couple of pieces that were in the online zine Neko Girl magazine, which, if you haven't read it, I very strongly encourage you to go check it out. That is definitely not safe for work. It's a little bit gnarly in some places, but it's very, very, very good. And when I read it, when I first tried to read it, I kind of bounced off of it. But then when I felt compelled to go back and try and reread it, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I don't know. I say whatever that reflects on me, but so much so that I ended up submitting Provisionally Controlled Madness, this piece here, and the other, the next collage art piece that I made, Breathing Darkness, which I will talk about in a future episode. I submitted it to Neko Girl magazine, and it ended up getting published in the next issue, which it's still so exciting to think about. But nevertheless, it's just, and in the pieces there, like with the ones here, it was a bunch of disparate images taken from a bunch of different sources. And in the case of the example in the magazine, it was mostly with pre-existing assets, or overlaid with text, overlaid with corrupted images that you couldn't really tell what they were, screenshots from articles, real-life photographs, all kind of blended together into this chaotic mess that was, despite it being a mess, was still very, very evocative, very, very powerful. And between seeing these two different collage pieces, I was just so moved that I wanted to try it myself. And here you are. So I feel like it's something that's kind of underappreciated as a digital art medium. It's like there's been kind of some movement in this direction with corrupting digital images and things like glitch art. It's sort of loosely similar in principle, but I feel like, even if you haven't created everything yourself that ends up in the collage, I don't think that takes away from it or makes it any less expressive of what the actual, assembler of the collage art piece. It doesn't make it any less evocative or personal for them. Certainly that much is true for me, even if half of the stuff in this image is stuff I made. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed listening to this, and I hope you enjoyed seeing this collage piece if you haven't seen it before. And I hope you take care and are doing well and continue to do well until the next time we meet.